Hablé con David Snyder, el director de arte nominado al Oscar por su trabajo en Blade Runner. Hablamos un montón, por lo que tuve que dividir esta entrevista en dos. En esta primera parte vamos a hablar de la historia y de cómo para él la película se definió gracias al ojo de Ridley Scott. Hablamos también de todos los problemas que tuvo hasta convertirse en el clásico que es hoy en día del cine del 80. Si quieren ver cómo se hicieron algunas escenas puntuales, les dejo el link acá arriba. Por lo pronto, acá van a ver cómo fue entonces que nació, cómo fue que se fue formando esta película llamada Blade Runner.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
Ridley Scott was an art director at the BBC in London before he became a director, although he made some films as a young man with his brother Tony, as you know. I would say that he was the executive production designer of not only Blade Runner, but probably every film he's ever done.
Kind of nervous when I take tests.
My job was to run the art department. We had a drafting room full of people, illustrators, storyboard guys, lots of people. That was my first job. And then Larry said, okay, I want you to run the construction department for me. The best thing that we did was to get Sid Mead, because Sid Mead isn't a film guy. He's an industrial designer, and he's worked for Volvo and General Electric and airlines, and he designs the future. Just near the end of the year, the company that was producing the film, Embassy Pictures, said, we don't want to make this movie anymore. We're finished. So they said $19.6 million was outrageous.
Yeah.
Now 300 million, 200 million, Disney, Marvel, whatever. It's nothing. But $19 million was such a little amount of money, but to them it was too much. So there we were, and we had no studio, but we kept going because Michael Dealey believed in Ridley and thought, well, it's his next picture after Alien. We had to do presentation for all the studios. So Larry, Paul, and I, we get all the drawings and put them up on the wall, no internet, no JPEG, big giant pieces of paper with Scotch tape all around all the walls. And they would invite people from the studios to come and see. United Artists, which had just gone bankrupt, the studio executives who were responsible for that came to the meeting, and they saw the drawings. And then the guy who was the head of the marketing department said, who is going to be the star of this movie? Because, Hollywood is driven by star power. Very happily, we said, Harrison Ford, we want him to play the role. And the guy from United Artists, the marketing guy, said, as far as I'm concerned, Harrison Ford doesn't add 10 cents to the value of this film. But remember, Harrison Ford was the guy from American Graffiti, and he was the guy from Star Wars.
Yeah.
But Indiana Jones had not come out yet.
Yeah.
So it was a whole new thing. And one of the reasons that Ridley wanted him was because George Lucas showed Ridley the footage from Indiana Jones, and he was wonderful. So finally that was solved, but we still had no studio. And then Alan Ladd Jr., who's the head of the Ladd Company, he had just formed that company, and he had a deal with Warner Brothers, output deal. So he had been the head of 20th Century Fox when they made Alien. So he probably, I guess Alan Ladd Jr., Laddie, as he was known, said, hey, well, I made a big hit with Ridley Scott. Maybe I'll make another one. So he rescued the film, literally, because we were shut down. The film was never going to be made.
Yeah.
And then when they needed the extra money, because Alan Ladd Jr. had an output deal, but he didn't have all the money, Run Shaw from Hong Kong, the Shaw brothers, came up with the money for the Far East distribution, meaning China, Hong
Yeah.
Kong, Taiwan, and all that. And of course, the irony is the film was only a hit originally in the Far East because people in Asia understood what we were doing. They could relate to the film, to the environment, and to the influx of the Asian population into California, which of course became a fact.
So that's the thing. That's why many people are speaking like Japanese, or they are Asian Americans or Asian. That was part of the agreement to put more actors from Asia when Hong Kong came with money. Do you know how was that?
No, not at all. It was just by coincidence that it happened. We knew that this was happening. This was happening, that a lot of Asian people, either they were escaping from communist China,
Yeah.
or Korea came for opportunity, and all of a sudden 40 years later, there's Koreatown in Los Angeles. There's so many people, they have their own districts, and we welcome them, but it added a nice element to the film because it made it more exotic to 1980 America, and also scared a lot of people too, which I think one of the reasons of its initial failure.
Blake, he say you Blade Runner.
Tell him I'm eating.
As soon as the film started, my job changed. What happened on that day was that we realized that someone was going to need to be on the set all the time, because during the filming, we realized that someone needed to be there, because as soon as Ridley would look through the lens at the set, he'd say, okay, take this and move that there, turn this upside down, take the thing from here and put it over there. And someone needed to be in charge of that. And I was elected. The last thing you see on the film is not so much what was designed on paper or painted by Sid Mead, but it was what Ridley saw through the lens, and he directed me to change things. And sometimes he would say, I don't like that. And I'd say, well, what do you want me to do? He says, that's your job, mate. You figure it out. And then I would figure something out, and then he would come by and say if he liked it or not. Yeah. So it was all guesswork, but it was exhausting. But you have to remember, this is only the third motion picture in my 50 years of filmmaking. So I was innocent, and I didn't know that kind of behavior was not the standard procedure of making feature motion pictures.
All those moments will be lost in time.
When we came to shoot that day, there were guys standing here like this, all the guys with the suit and tie from the money people. Yeah. And they said, okay, look at their clock and say, when the sun comes up, that's it, we're finished. Yay, finally we're finished with this movie.
Like tears in rain.
And then that was the end. But it wasn't the end for me, because during that week, Douglas Trumbull came to me and said, I'm doing a film called Brainstorm, and I want you to come and be the art director. I couldn't say no to Doug Trumbull because he's like a genius. He's like a world-renowned genius of visual effects. And so the fact that he asked me to do it, I couldn't say no, even though I was exhausted. I said yes. And it meant like another job. Of course, they give you money. Yeah. So I had the great fortune of working through the entire post-production of Blade Runner, which art directors and production designers never get to do, because once the film is in the can, your job is over. Yeah. But for me, because I was working on Brainstorm, doing the sets and all that at MGM, it meant that I was in the same building where all the post-production was happening. I got to meet Philip Dick, just like the only day he ever saw part of the footage of the film, with Joanna Cassidy and Ridley, just because I happened to be there. I wasn't invited, but I was there, and Ridley said, come on, we're going to go look at the footage. So I was there when they were building the miniatures I was there for all of it, which meant that there was a connection between production and post-production, which normally no one wants to pay for an art department person to be the bridge. So I became not only the art director in Brainstorm, but I was also the visual effects art director, the liaison between production and post-production. So I got to be there for all that, and that's why I see the film. I've seen more of the film and worked more days on Blade Runner than probably anyone, aside from Ridley Scott. So at the end of the day, I mean, the last thing I want to say about it is people are asking me about the film all the time. So if you're in a position like I am, and that is to be behind the camera every single day where it's filming, the film that I see in my head, no one's ever seen before. So I see all the things that aren't really on the screen. And I've always said, I wish I could erase that from my brain and see the movie that everyone else sees, and then maybe I'd know what everyone's talking about. Because I see things that no one has seen.
Will you help us? What seems to be the problem? Death. I want more life.
I was disappointed at first that it wasn't a success. And then at the end of the day, when they had the screening at the New Art Theater, when they found the 70 millimeter print and booked it into the New Art Theater in 1991, I was contacted by Los Angeles Times critic Kenneth Turan, and he found me, and he came over to my house, and I gave him all of my stuff that I had, my memorabilia for the film, and he wrote an article in the Los Angeles Times Sunday magazine with a beautiful illustration of Sid Mead's painting on it. And all of a sudden, starting in 1991, there was a gigantic renaissance of the film that was saved by the press and also saved by the university film schools like Stanford University and NYU. All of a sudden, because it had become a subject of study, it got a lot of press, a lot of ink, a lot of pixels. Yeah. People were talking about it. And then when Warner Brothers finally figured out that they might be able to finally make some money on the film, they allowed them to do what's known as the final cut, which is the only movie. I tell people that don't bother watching anything except the final cut, because it's the only movie, because it finally had the tools that we needed to make the film in the first place. We just couldn't do it.